Virginia.
So I do want us to all give a very big round of applause for Danica Roem.
Bravo!
Thank you so much to all y'all for coming out with 3 weeks and 5 days to go until early voting begins in my lifelong home of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I am so excited for us to win this campaign.
Yeah.
And here's one thing that you're going to hear constantly from in your inboxes. Who here has ever gotten a Democratic email saying, "Oh my God, we're down by 10. If you don't give us $2 right now, we're going to win." We don't do that in this campaign because we believe that we inspire people to want to help us to win. We inspire people to tell us why we should go out and run to represent them in the first place. And we inspire people to do this together. Not when sky is falling, oh my God, everything is going to be awful if you don't rush your $1.66 donation today. We will tell you, we know what it takes to win this election, and we're ready to do it this fall, and we're going to get the job done. Let's give our host tonight the biggest round of applause. Thank you for having constantly been in this over and over again. It's good to see some familiar faces who've been coming out and doing this with us for the last few years. If you've come out to help us out before, please raise your hand. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you for that. And just so you know, the R's back home love attacking you for helping me. And my voters are cool with it. We're good, so that's fine.
Whatever entertains them.
Here's the thing. In 2019, they actually sent out a direct mail piece that had my face with a star around it and said, "Does Danica Roem want a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame?" And I said, "That's ridiculous. It's supposed to be a monument at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame." And then on the inside it said, "Danica Roem has spent thousands of dollars on lavish travel to go to the Grammys with Demi Lovato." First off, I never spent thousands of dollars on lavish travel for that. No. And also, I've never been to the Grammys. It was the American Music Awards. Completely different. So, I love the idea here that one of the things that they're so upset about is that no matter where in the United States you live, our Democratic Party has a sense of community, that we will come together to work together to win together. This is one of the fundamental things that makes us Democrats, is that we genuinely care about making sure that we look out for each other. The entire line, my brother's keeper, sister's keeper, non-binary person's keeper for that matter, we are each other's keeper. And that's what matters the most here. And especially when you just heard how our civil rights are under attack. What happens in one state absolutely affects us no matter where we live. Prime example of that, state of Mississippi is why you now have a piecemeal by piecemeal by piecemeal right to your legal right to safe legal abortion in the country. The reason that California is now having people coming in from across the country to access their own health care is because of what happened in a state legislature in the Deep South.
Yep.
Don't think for a second that state legislative races outside of your home community don't matter and don't affect you, because they do. By the way, when you all pass a clean car standard, which they love attacking me for voting to make Virginia the second state to adopt that, they love going after this. Anyone else notice a really hazy sky all throughout this summer because Canada's been on fire?
Yep.
That affects all of us. That affects all of us. Climate change isn't just coming, it is here. And the very real life problems that we are having with this means that we have to have real leaders who are willing to stand up and do something so that we actually have an environment to preserve for the future in the first place. That matters. And in my district, by the way, in Western Virginia County, I believe believe that we shouldn't be clear-cutting the woods so that we can have a bunch of data centers that are going to be obsolete in 20 years. I think the woods should exist. I think the woods are great. Turns out, maybe some people think that's a radical position for me to have. No. Woods are good. We like the woods. We should have more woods. And in fact, I would support a lot more reforestation for that matter. Now, to continue with this, one of the things when people love asking me all the time, this happens to Democrats wherever you go, especially if you ever run for office, people go, well, what type of Democrat are you? Are you a Bernie Democrat? Are you a Hillary Democrat? Are you a this Democrat? Are you a this Democrat? I'm a constituent service Democrat. Public service, constituent service. The reason our slogan in this campaign is fixing roads, feeding kids, is because if you want to know what I have focused my last 6 years in the General Assembly on, it's been fixing roads and feeding kids. Who knew? Maybe there's some truth in advertising going on here. And so what do we have to show for it? Well, in my 6 years in office, I've been in the minority party 4 times, and I've been in the majority party twice. And we have now passed 41 of my bills into law, all with bipartisan support, including 12 bills to feed hungry kids. And one of those bills, HB 5113, has now led the City of Manassas and the City of Manassas Park to provide universal free school breakfast and free school lunch to all students in those 2 cities, as well as 37 of our 100 schools in Prince William County. And by the way, we carried legislation, just like you all have done now, for universal free school breakfast and free school lunch for all kids, because childhood hunger should not exist. Hunger should not exist, for that matter, especially with children. And yet, the House Republicans this year killed that bill and killed my budget amendment for it. Delegate Mike Mullen carried the bill. I was the chief co on it, and it died. And one of the deciding votes on that was one of the other Republican candidates now running for one of the 7 battleground state Senate districts in Virginia right now. Y'all, if we're going to have something as simple as feeding children get done, then apparently we have to have Democratic majorities in both chambers. And I will tell you this, you show me Democratic majorities in both chambers of the Virginia General Assembly next year, and I will show you a budget that includes universal free school meals for all kids that goes to Governor Youngkin's desk next year, when he will not be running for President of the United States, and he's going to have to actually focus on governing Virginia. Yeah. He does not have a plausible pathway to the Republican nomination for president if either chamber in the Virginia General Assembly is Democratic majority. He does not have a path. It's not there. He cannot do it. However, that doesn't mean that he's not going across the country raising millions of dollars through his PAC, which he then gives either to the Republican Party of Virginia or he gives directly to candidates. And this means 12 candidates in the House, 7 candidates in the Senate. So, what does all of that mean? Well, he took $2 million, including $1 million intervals each, from a Republican donor in Florida, and then he immediately turned around and gave $1 million of that to the Republican Party of Virginia. He took $1 million from a Republican donor in Texas. He took $40,000 directly from America's favorite travel agent, Harlan Crow. That's right, everyone. Clarence Thomas gives him 5-star review on Yelp. See the world with Harlan Crow. 1 yacht at a time, someplace halfway around the world. Now, if they are on their side going to throw all that money to the governor to give to Republican legislative candidates, including my challenger, then what does that mean we need to do? That means that we have to actually hustle and do the work. And by the way, since July 1, we are now closing in on 2,000 donations made to this campaign just since July 1 for this campaign. My finance director, Ben, just gave us the loudest clap on that one. So he'll have more to tell you later. So what is also really super important with this, though, is the individual hustle. I'm on pace right now to have knocked more than 1,000 doors myself this month. Or at least if you include the first weekend of September, which is the reporting period that we have for canvassing and stuff, blah, blah, blah. But long story short is, when I'm not doing an event like this, I'm on doors back home. And I'm on doors, I'm on doors, I'm on doors, I'm on doors, and I'm on doors. And I've been doing this not just through 3 elections. I do it in the even years, too, when I'm not on the ballot. And let me tell you a story about why. In 2020, at the start of the pandemic, there was a story that came out in the Washington Post where a mother from Gainesville in my district, my House district, as well as the Senate district I'm running for, she talked about how her 7-year-old cancer-surviving daughter cried to her, "Mommy, I don't want to get coronavirus," because the schools were not allowing parents to show up by themselves. They had to bring their kids with them in order to pick up meals for those kids and get them fed while the schools were shut down. So I saw this and said, "Oh my God, we've got to do something about this." And then I saw a story, another one, a story of a family of 10 out of Bristow. And they were having a similar struggle where they have some of their kids have major disabilities and they're stretched thin. They needed some help. So one of my constituents and I, her name's Adele, what we did immediately is we fundraised locally. We said, "Hey, anyone who can pitch in, we're going to give this money directly to these families." And so we raised several $100s for each family and gave that money to them in cash. And then the other thing is, I actually went out myself. I bought groceries and just anything that I could fit in the trunk of my car. I then pull up to the house, knock on the door, and not only do we have several hundreds of dollars for this family in Gainesville, we lay out the groceries. And you know what the mom says? She turns around and she goes, "Hey kids, we're having dinner tonight."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
When I say I'm a constituent service Democrat, this is what I'm talking about. You don't do something like that because you think it's going to make you the best headline, and you think, "Hey, 3 years from now, I can't wait when I'm running for state senate in a district that hadn't been drawn yet. I wonder if I can use this to my advantage." You do that because someone needs your help, and someone needs your help immediately in that moment. And when you have an elevated platform as an official, it's your job to use it for the people who need the most help. You were hearing before about what's happening to Black and brown trans women across the country right now. And look, that doesn't mean that as a white trans woman, it's always nice and everything's kind and everyone's just the best to us. No, we get hurt, we get killed too. That also happens. At the same time, we have to recognize what it looks like to have an epidemic of murder that happens, especially toward Black trans women here in the United States. And then what do we do about it? Well, those of us who have platforms, who have a position where we actually are heard, where people are paying attention to what we're saying every day, we need to elevate their voices so they can tell their stories and bring attention to anyone who's willing to step up and do something to help. And in my district, you know what happened? In 2020, I had, that summer, I had a 15-year-old student constituent from Manassas Park High School who sent me an email saying, "Danica, I'm afraid as an LGBTQ person that someone is going to hurt me. Can you pass a bill to ban the gay trans panic defense, just like you all have done here?" And I said, "Absolutely. I will personally introduce that legislation. I'm going to fight for it." Next year comes in, we get the bill out of the House with bipartisan support, by the way. We get the bill into the Senate, and the only Democratic legislator in the entire country who ever voted against this bill at all just became the lead opposition to it, blah, blah, blah. Well, short story, he just lost his primary back in June.
Yay!
Elections have consequences. And so you know what we did? We got that bill passed in the Senate, and I was able to then tell my 15-year-old student constituent, "Your email that you sent to me led to this bill being signed into law. This was your initiative. I want you to take some ownership of this." Now, that bill passed that year and was signed into law in March of 2021. And in between the time of the bill being signed and it going into effect on July 1, there was a horrific killing of an out person in Southwest Virginia. And the judge ruled that because the bill had not been in effect yet, it wouldn't apply to that case. And the guy got off completely free. Completely free. When I look at this and I go, my God, if we had only done something earlier, if we had only done this, and I think back about that, we have to remember as a community that as we are pursuing these public policy ideals and we're pursuing the things that we know will make our states better, our communities better, and our country better, and in fact, even our world better, that there is the, as Martin Luther King said, the fierce urgency of now to do something about it. Because if you wait and you wait and you wait for the ideal time at the ideal moment, the person who you might be advocating for might not be there anymore. You've got to fight, and you've got to fight when you have that opportunity as soon as you can. And you've got to be committed to going for the long haul. You know what happens when you have people who have a ton of money and a ton of corporate backing and all the other things? They will wait you out. They have more lawyers, more attorneys than anyone. They will wait you out. You have to be just as resilient and never, ever give up. And in my district, you know what we did? When we had a big fight about above-ground transmission lines and stuff, where I had to take on two major corporations when I was a newspaper reporter in 2014, as in Dominion Energy and Amazon, and then I outed Amazon as the owner of a data center in Haymarket and Dominion, which I refused to disclose. I was able to do that because I didn't care if paper girl attacked me or say something negative or whatever, because I had an obligation to my readers. I had an obligation to do something. And then once I got in office, I fought and I fought and I fought. It took 3 years, but we finally got a bill passed to ban these giant underground transmission lines along this very specific corridor, blah, blah, blah. I mentioned that because once we get there, once you get your candidates elected and we show up to these events, and then once we're there, don't give up your advocacy. You follow them to your state capital, and you keep working for the public policy initiatives that you care about in the first place. In 2017, all of those advocates who kept showing up and showing up and showing up after the Republicans on a party line 66-34 defeated Medicaid expansion for what we were told was going to be 400,000 people at the time. Well, we flipped 15 of their seats red and blue that fall, freaked them out, and our advocates showed up in Richmond. They didn't just stop when the election ended. They kept showing up, and then when we got Medicaid expansion done, to this day, it is now covering 730,000 Virginians across the country. More than 20,000 of those people being covered had their cancer treatments covered because of Medicaid expansion. I asked any of my Republican colleagues who voted against that, which one of your constituents who has survived cancer and had their cancer treatment treated because of Medicaid expansion, do you think should have gone untreated? Because that was the option. The option was not, let's have a different form of insurance, let's have a different this or pull this. No, that system had failed. The option was up or down, Medicaid expansion to cover this person's cancer treatments, yes or no. I voted yes. And then I voted to keep it in the budget, and now that issue is so toxic to the other side, they've given up on it.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
That doesn't mean that suddenly they've seen the light of day and now everything's going great. Nope. We have to keep fighting. 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 I had a constituent from Manassas who was missing her dominant arm from underneath her right elbow after a horrific series of events that happened. And my first year in office, I introduced a bill to require insurers to have to cover the cost of state-of-the-art prosthetic devices for amputees, people in the limb loss community. So the Republicans killed that bill. Brought it back the next year. They sent that bill to a study. Democrats took over. And I said, hey, we got through part 1 of the study. Let's do it this year, 2020. They're like, no, it's got to go through part 2. And part 2 played out, finally wrapped up after the 2021 session. So I get elected a third time. I bring the bill back in 2022. And this time, we kept working it, and they amended it, and they stripped it down to a little bit, but now, the bill that we finally got passed after 5 years of fighting for it says that major private employers who provide health insurance have to now actually cover these state-of-the-art prosthetic devices. That doesn't affect a whole lot of people, but the people who it does affect, it is life-changing for them. I fought for that bill not because I thought, oh my God, I can't wait to make national news on my prosthetics bill. I fought for that bill because a woman from Manassas needed an arm, and a woman from Gainesville needs a leg. That's why I fought for this. This is what being a constituent service Democrat to me means. And I'm going to wrap it up with a quick story here. And now let's do a little Q&A. We'll have a little fun, okay? By simply showing up and making ourselves vulnerable enough to be visible, we can inspire people to reach higher heights who we've never even met. Sometimes it's because, hey, someone I did know showed up. Hey, sometimes it's because, oh, wow, that person I've heard of before. My first week as a candidate ended in January of 2017. I did on my first day as a candidate, January 3rd, 2017, I had done an interview with an LGBTQ publication out of DC called Metro Weekly, and I had done one with my hometown newspaper, the Gainesville Times, that I worked for 9 years. And those stories got published, and one of those 2 stories goes online, and someone 4 hours away southwest in Roanoke reads it. It was a mom who says, "There's hope in this." She printed it out, and she gave it to her 10-year-old autistic transgender daughter, who just months earlier had begun presenting as the little girl who she is at school. And 3 of the other kids jumped her. She tried jumping out of the 2nd floor of a house because she thought no one could ever understand someone who was like her. So her mom gives her this piece. She reads it once. She reads it twice. She reads it a 3rd time. She looks up at her mom and she says, "She's just like me." And her mom goes, "Yeah, she's just like you." And she goes, "How does she do it? How does she put herself out there?" And her mom says, "Because Danica knows who she is. And when you know who you are, you can do that." And she goes, "Well, if Danica can do it, so can I." And that family, that mom and that daughter, they drove all the way up and they campaigned with us in my primary. When I was being outspent by tens of thousands of dollars by 2 different candidates, I was being outmailed 2-1. And we won that primary by 11.5 points because we were never out hustled. The family came back again in the general election, driving 4 hours each way, 3.5 depending on I-81. By the way, I voted to fix that. It's a whole thing. We'll talk about that. No. So, with that, they came back up and they came back up, and then election day comes. It had been raining all day, pretty much half the day at least. And to the point where there was this photo published in the Washington Post when polls end, I throw my arms in the air and go, "Yay!" It's just like, "Oh, that's Danica. You're so excited that you're going to win tonight. No more rain!" I was so excited to not be soaked anymore. At this point, if you were to look at the photos from that night, you will see my feet were slid into my Mary Jane shoes, the little strap ones, where I had a Marshall's plastic bag over this foot and a Dollar Tree bag over this foot, because when I had launched that campaign, I was unemployed, uninsured, driving a $324 92 Dodge Shadow, aka the Babe Magnet of 2017. As a transgender reporter, metalhead, yogini, stepmom, vegetarian, not exactly someone out of central casting, living at my mom's house. So, at age 32. And that night, here I am, 33, walking in plastic bags into the first of the 2 victory parties I'd go to that night. And I was just waiting on absentee ballots for Prince William County to come in. And I get a phone call. And keep in mind, when I was broke, I had $25,000 of credit card debt. I didn't have a smartphone. I won a campaign on a dumb phone. And I checked this phone, and it has one of those no-name numbers that come up. If you're from Northern Virginia, that's a pretty common sight, because government workers. If you're from the rest of the country, it's a whole thing when government workers call. Well, this one, I pick up and go, "Hello?" And the person goes, "Hi, Vice President Joe Biden would like to speak to you. Would you like to speak to the Vice President?" I go, "Okay." So I get on the phone, and sure enough, there's Diamond Joe. He calls me to congratulate me that I won. At which point I said, "I think it's okay for us to declare now." So I walk back into the main room. I wave my arms in the air, and I go, hey, Joe Biden just called. And the whole place is, "I go, we won." And they sort of, woo! Everyone's doing that. And so I fall to the ground, I put my hands over my eyes, and I start kind of just like, because at this point I was so dehydrated despite the rain, I had no tears left. And I was, and so that's how I won. So I then drove from there across the county. And I go to the Prince William County Democratic Committee's victory party over at Waters Inn Brewery. And I'm about to get out of my car. State Senator Jeremy Pike looks over my shoulder. He looks at my feet, which are still in plastic bags. Yes, I was wearing plastic bags when Joe Biden called me. And he goes, no. So I had to grab a pair of heels from the back seat, put those on instead. Get out of the car, and the first person I see was that 10-year-old, now 11-year-old trans girl. And I picked her up, and I looked her right in the eye, and said, honey, you can be president. You can be whoever you want to be, because we just want tonight. Yeah. And she would do an interview on Vice later that night, on Broadway. And she said, I could be president. I can be whoever I want. And if Danica can do this, so can I. And by the way, she's doing just fine now. She's doing great. I'll tell you that story to close on this, and then we'll do our Q&A. When we head into the first ballots being cast on September 22nd this year, every one of you who is writing a postcard, who's sending us money, who's making the phone calls, who's texting, who's flying out, knocking doors for us, some of you all done that before, all of you are doing something to inspire someone you've never even met, to be able to see in themselves that representation not only matters, but it actually exists. And that you can succeed because of who you are, not despite it, and not for what discriminatory politicians tell you're supposed to be. You be you better than anyone else ever could, because you're the only one who ever can. Thank you.